G'day everyone and welcome back to the channel. It's been a while, but I've been busy planning and prepping for a big trip that's been years in the making. Something I've wanted to do since I was a young bloke. I'm gonna run through that trip now in a bit of detail, but stick around because later in the video I'm going to show you all the major and minor mods I've made to the KLR for this trip. The trip's a fully solo and unsupported trip the entire way, where I'll be free camping everywhere. We'll cover 5 states, some of the toughest outback locations in the country. Starting from Melbourne, I'm going to head up to the Little Desert in Victoria and try and do a full crossing east to west there of nearly 100 k's of what's quite deep white sand desert. Having had zero sand riding experience, the Little Desert trip's going to serve as a bit of a training ground and also a bit of a testing run for a fully loaded bike. So I'm going to fill up my fuel bladders. I'm going to just test out the suspension and play around with the preload and get it as good as I can before I enter the Simpson, so I don't have to do it when I'm in the Simpson. And then from there I'm going to head up to the South Australian Flinders Ranges, do a bit of exploring, a bit of camping in the Flinders Ranges, and then I'm going to make my way straight up into the Simpson Desert by the Unadilla track. I'm going to start from Mount Dare and attempt a full crossing all the way to Birdsville, which has been closed for quite a long time due to flooding. So when I get to Mount Dare, the guys there that do the recoveries told me that only one other motorbike has made it through prior to me getting there. So the big challenge there is the Air Creek crossing. So that's been flooded and there's a detour around it, but you still have to do a quite deep, bonnet deep river crossing apparently. So to get across the entire desert, I'm going to need to carry a lot of extra fuel, which is going to add a lot of extra weight to an already heavy setup with a few weeks worth of luggage, 200 kilo bike, 50 litres of fuel, 12 to 15 litres of water. It's going to be heavy. It's going to be hard to pick up. It's going to be a tricky bike to navigate through deep sand, that's for sure. So from Birds, I'm going to travel north through outback Queensland up into Gulf country. I'm going to attempt to get to the tip of Cape York from the Gulf Coast side, which is a notoriously difficult and sketchy area in terms of its tracks. It's croc infested, very remote, long distances between petrol stops, a lot of things that are going to be pretty challenging to try and get to the Cape. Then from there, plan is to ride straight back down through the outback to Melbourne. So what are the upgrades I've done to the KLR for this trip? Start with a couple of the big ones. I've done the suspension front and rear. I've done in the rear, I've put a Cogent Dynamics Moab shock. And in the front, I've installed a YSS front fork spring kit with the preload adjusters and everything on them. I've put on a Atlas throttle lock for some cruise control for the big kilometers I'm going to do on the blacktop. I've replaced my brake pedal for the 3rd time, another brake snake on there, a new gear shift lever, put on a new X-ring chain and sprockets. I actually didn't change a front one because it was pretty new, so I've just got a new rear sprocket and an X-ring chain. I've replaced my crash bars with the Gen 2 SRC crash bars with the rubber mounts. Fresh tyres front and rear. I've got the Desert HT motors on the front and I've got the Adventure motors on the rear. Put in a tyre pressure monitoring system just so I can keep my eye on tyre pressures, get them nice and low and make sure they don't get too low so I don't tear a valve in the desert. I've replaced all the wheel bearings front and rear, as well as a full service with a bunch of general maintenance items like greasing up the suspension linkages and swing arm and these bits and bobs. And then I've given a bit of an overhaul to all the wiring, made sure everything's tight and dust proof, replaced a lot of wiring, sealed a lot of things up, a lot of Loctiting.
Alright, engine light on.
You might remember when I cooked my KLR in my last video at the top of the Avon Wilderness and she refused to turn over.
We got our problems.
To address the overheating, I've done a full radiator flush and replacement of the fluid, installed an inline hose sensor and a temp gauge to the dash so I can keep a bit of an eye on it and make sure I don't cook her on this trip in the desert. If you want to see the KLR and all these new mods put to the test, stay tuned for the first episode, which will be the little desert crossing. It's going to be a bit of a wake-up call for me and unexpectedly one of the toughest, if not the toughest days of riding I've ever done. This is going to be an insane solo trip. Don't forget to like and subscribe and chuck the noties on so you don't miss any of the action. Thanks for watching, legends.